Shabbat Shalom. Please feel free to take your seats. If you don't like that, take somebody else's. As we get started, I would just like to announce that in a moment of good news, it is not Rich Schneebolt's birthday this week. It's Shabbat again. Happens every week. That wasn't meant to be funny. What happens, I'll stop the music. When I went into Hebrew Union College to a Jewish seminary, there was one question asked of all applicants. Name the 3 major Jewish holidays in the Jewish calendar. And everybody said Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Hanukkah. And when they looked at them, they said, okay, Pesach, Passover. Half of the applicants in those days to Hebrew Union College did not recognize the most important holiday in the Jewish calendar, the Shabbat. I walked out confused. Well, I was one of the ones who got it right, so I felt good, but that's okay. But I walked out confused because clearly people planning on leading our people felt that something that happened so often couldn't be that special. It couldn't be that special if it showed up every week. It had to be something that we think about that takes 2 months of planning and cooking, and how do you get matzo balls in a circle and not a square like, I didn't read the whole book. But we have this issue of it happens a lot, so we don't see it as special. We don't see it as enormously unique. Shame on us. It is. It's our job to find the joy in something that happens every week. It is our job to find something different that happens in the joy every week. And lately, we sing joyful songs, and it was kind of like the Super Bowl 3 weeks ago, which was a big yawn. There was nothing special about it when it finally showed up. Shabbat shows up every week. It's our job to find a touchstone to that joyfulness. So before we sing something else, offer a Shabbat blessing, not a story, not a joke, but a heartfelt blessing to the person you came in with. Find something unique and special about them that you haven't said to them in the last 10 years or week, and turn that into a blessing. Blessings are a skill set. Practice your skill, and then turn to someone you don't know and find something in them to bless them as well. Shabbat. blessings, God, to all the Israel. Amen. Amen. May God bless His house, His May God bless His house. Amen. We always begin with the candles, those things that bring Shabbat light into our home. Historically, we did it at home, but our lives changed about 80 years ago when many of us started to drive and work late. And many came straight to the synagogue as opposed to going home for Shabbat dinner. And so the Reform movement said, how do we fix that? And we put the lighting of Shabbat candles and the Kiddush over the wine in the synagogue so that no one would have to miss it. So for Shabbat candle lighting tonight, we'd like to call on Kathy Eisenberg. Shamor, to guard. Zachor, to remember.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'shanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu b'ma'ariv
Chatzi Kaddish coming up separates the opening section, Kabbalat Shabbat, the receiving of Shabbat, from this first segment of liturgy called the Shema and her benedictions. Yet Gadal, Yet Gadal, Shemei Rabba, Domadi Lachute, Yamlich Malchute, Bechayei Chol, Ubyomei Chol, Ubechayei Chol, Beit Yisrael. Blessed, praised, honored, exalted, extolled, glorified, adored, and lauded be the name of the Holy Blessed One, beyond all earthly words and songs of blessing, praise, and comfort, to which we say, Amen. Amen. melech sharim, uvivuna mishaneh itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umsader et hakochavim b'mishmerotehem, barakia kirtzonom. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Ma'avir yom u'mevi layla, u'mavdil bein yom u'vein layla. Adonai tzvaot shemo, hayachai v'kayam. Tamid yamlocha lenu le'olam va'ed, baruch atah Adonai. Hama'ariv Aravim. Hama'ariv Aravim. The word Erev repeats evening. Hama'ariv is the Ever of evenings, the miracle of creative worship. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot. That there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto, we don't normally speak after this prayer, but go straight into the V'ahavta, which are the next lines of the Torah. But I want to take 1 second. If you look at the last letter of that first word in that semicircuit that says Shema, which means to hear, if you look at it in the Hebrew, you'll see that last letter is bigger than the others. And then if you go to the end of that whole line and you see that last letter of the whole prayer, that letter Dalet, is also a little bit bigger. If you put those two letters together, it spells the word aid, which is witness. And so, within the Shema, what we do state is Adonai is our God, Adonai is one, and yes, we do witness to that. There are many things that we share with our Christian brothers and sisters, and you will hear some of that tonight, and I'll explain it later. But for those who say, but we're Jewish, we don't witness. Yes, we do. Our actions, our behaviors, every day, and every time we recite the Shema, witness to the strength of our relationship with God. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levav v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'odecha ve'ayu ha'dvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzvata hayom ha'levavecha v'shinantam levavecha v'dibarta ha'am v'shivtecha v'beitecha Uvlechtecha haderech, uvshachmecha uvkumecha, uvshatam le'ota yedecha, v'hayuletot afot bein einecha, uchtatam al mezuzot beitecha, uvishtarecha, lema'an tizkiru ba'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'tem kedoshim le'elohechem, Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments, and to be holy to your God. You performed miracles for us. United
Shabbat, the Torah from the Olam, Tishomru, B'nei Yisrael, et HaShabbat, Lasot et HaShabbat, the Torah from the Olam. B'nei Ruvain, B'nei Yisrael, Oti Le'olam, Oti Le'olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, Lasot et HaShabbat, B'torah Olam. Ki sheishet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et hashabat, Lasot et hashabat, L'torah Olam. U'bayom hashvi'i, Shabbat vayinapash, Shabbat vayinapash, Shabbat vayinapash. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, Lasot et HaShabbat, L'torah
We rise for the middle section of our service. Tefillah, a series of blessings so important that the word tefillah, which means prayer, explains this, and it is actually called ha-tefillah, the prayer. We call on Linda and Bernie Chazen.
Adonai sifetai tiftach u'v'yahidi latecha. Adonai open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'Imotzeinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hadol, Ha'yibud Ha'orah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Todim, V'konei Hadol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot, U'mevi Geula Livnei B'neihem, L'ma'an Shalom V'ha'ahah, Melech Hosea Moshiach Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham, Bezrat Sarah. Atah yibul olam Adonai, B'chayei hakol atah Rabo Hoshia, Mechakel chayim b'chesed, Mechayei hakol b'racham rabim, Zomech nochlim b'rofei cholim, U'makir asurim, U'mekayim emunato, Lishenei afar, V'chamo kabal gevurot, U'midom melach, Melech benit u'mekayim, U'masmiach Yeshua, V'ne'emanat ha'chayot ha'kol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei al-ha'akol. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יעללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. The heaven and the earth were finished. list, asking God to offer refuah shlema, a full and complete healing and return to Barbara Abramowitz, Ruth Benson, Vivian Berkman, Beverly Elster, Helen Heller, Len Heller, Harry Jackson, Dorothy Janin, Sandu Kreuter, Linda Levin, Evie Morabito, Joe Morabito, Joel Rosenberg, Ethel Rolnick, Sarah Teitelbaum, Jackie Ward. And if there are other names,
Marty Osias, Bob Stone, Joe Friedman.
Linda Crease Latoria.
And Jeff, plus Alexandra Fell.
Alan Shirley Hall.
Tom Chizitsky. Jackie Kirk.
Susan Long.
Roger Madden. Ruth Ann Glusbart. Rosemary Steinham. Jay Burson.
Ellen DeBrow, Lori June Wentworth, Al Chazen, Morris Chazen, and Cindy Chazen.
Lee Blanc and Dave Leibowitz.
Doris Schiffman.
Mark Rosenthal.
Adrian Malone, Mark Schlein, Victoria Levin, Karen Conley, Ron Blakeney, Linda Miller, and Jerry Snake.
Yehudi Bardor-Leah, Rocco Klein, Abba Abigail.
tonight is going to be a different night. Don't get excited. It's not Hanukkah. Or Pesach. Why is tonight different from all other nights? That's coming up soon. So I'll start practicing. A few months ago, I read a story in the news. I read and I get the news. And it so shocked me that I decided to do something. That wasn't it. I decided to do something, and so what I did was reach out to a number of friends. And here's the story. It's not made up. It's real. I'm not going to read this story to you. I am simply going to show you the cover, which you cannot see on the screens enough. But the title at the top of it says the following, and I commend you to clear your minds and hear this. Half of Canada, half of Canada thinks that the United States is full of Nazis. A survey done. Half of our Canadian neighbors to the north believe that the United States is full. And while I do not have the exact percentage number, I do remember sitting up most of the night. I remember being so shocked I couldn't make words. And I realized our problem was we don't really know very much about each other. I got a thing in the email a couple of days ago and watched a 6-minute documentary that's being shown at the Academy Awards, pre-awards things. A 6-minute documentary called A Night at the Garden. And what it is documentary film from 1939 in Madison Square Garden, where over 20,000 Americans, our neighbors, dressed in suits and ties, walked into Madison Square Garden for an American Nazi rally. 20,000. The American Bund was not a ghost, other than the fact that they were our neighbors, and they knew nothing about us, but that they hated us. And the sick part was that was enough. They didn't need anything else. Well, in 1939, my mother actually had 2 parents who came from Europe and settled downtown. And they were hated. And if you follow the line, you'll find out that guess what? Hitler thought the idea of the ideal country was to take American values and just have one guy in charge. And take out the people that you didn't like anyway. And there are books written about the fact that Hitler's vision of Nazi Germany was based on a slight, tiny little revision of American society. And so I sat up. I do that on occasion. And I didn't sleep. I do that a lot. And I said, what we need is understanding. What we need are Shabbatot of understanding. Shabbatot binah. Shabbases of understanding. You cannot dislike what you know, but it's easy to hate what you stay away from. It's easy to see the other guys as the enemy. The less you know, the easier it is to be uncomfortable around them. We've seen that recently in our community. Just Tuesday night, we brought in a Muslim member of our community to stand on this bima. We had a small turnout because we didn't have a lot of time, we only had a week. But if I tell you how disappointed I was to hear over and over, how could you put a Muslim on our bima to speak? I was crushed. I was hurt. And I looked out at my congregation and believed we were on a wrong path. That we don't get it. And so tonight is the beginning of a series of Shabbatot Binot, of Shabbases of understanding. And so I have invited several clergy members of the community to come and not talk to us about how wonderful we are, or to tell us how wonderful we're not, but to tell us who they are. Because in the foreword of that Muslim's book, I told the story that I was in Publix shortly after 9/11, and I turned to a woman with a hijab on and said, "I can see that you're a Muslim, can I ask you a question?" And she took 4 steps back because she was scared. I am a lot of things. Scary. I mean, you know, maybe. This is pretty big if you're that tall. And I realized that she was afraid. And all I wanted to know was, what's the appropriate blessing to offer to a Muslim during Ramadan? And it went on, and very quickly, she said, "Happy Ramadan." To which I said, "You must be kidding. You can't eat and you can't have sex. What's so good to be happy about?" And her husband stood behind her and went, but I learned something. Lack of knowledge is scary for both sides. And so tonight we begin a process of binot, of understanding. And to start these Shabbatot, and you can check in the calendar, it's in there, it's pretty much over the next 6 weeks, I think, or 7 weeks, there's 3 or 4 people coming. I've asked Pastor David Hancock, who shepherds his flock, the Grove, in this building on Sunday mornings. I'm not suggesting you cross over the river to the other side. But if you ever want to see something really fascinating, you got to come see what they do to this building and this room on a Sunday morning. It is mind-numbing what they do. So I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm going to let David explain to you who he is. He represents a contemporary vision of Protestantism in America. He's on his own now. I heard him last Sunday. I'm not worried.
I have a confession to make to start off. So, I took Hebrew in seminary, and I got an A. Now, I was trying to sing along with you, and I think I might have gotten the wrong letter grade because I could not keep up, and now I feel like a total failure. So maybe you could give me some encouragement later. So I want you to know, it is such an honor for me to be here with you, and I think you'll understand why I say that by the time I am finished with this talk. And I'll just start off saying it like this. There's a phrase that we have in the New Testament, and it goes like this: salvation comes from the Jews. Meaning this, for me, salvation does not exist for me without you. Salvation does not exist as far as Christianity understands it for humanity without you. So, deeply, deeply honored to be with you. Rabbi Benson asked me to share with you about our church, the Grove, and also Protestantism. And he gave me less than 20 minutes to do this. Now, this is an impossible task to do in less than 20 minutes, but I also believe Jesus rose from the grave, so I believe in miracles, so perhaps it will happen tonight. We shall see.
We will time you.
Start the timer. Start the timer.
I did.
Okay, got it. Okay, I saw the time. So the first thing I want to do is I want to tell you about us, the Grove, but also I want to spend most of our time talking about Protestantism. Specifically, though, what I want to do is I want to bridge the gap, and I want to show you how Christianity is rooted in your scriptures, I'll call them the Old Testament scriptures. How Christianity is actually rooted in the Old Testament scriptures. And this line, again, salvation comes from the Jews. You are a treasure to us. And so that's what I want to focus on tonight. But so first, our church, the Grove. So we're a Christian church. I have a Presbyterian background, but nobody in the church probably even knows how to spell Presbyterian. So we're just a church just filled with people who are Christians. Now, we're in a sermon. I love doing this. Whenever I'm here and I meet one of you, I love to tell you that we're in our sermon series right now in Genesis. Before that, we were in Proverbs. And whenever I meet you and someone new from the temple, and I say, oh yeah, we're reading books, through the Old Testament books, and you look at me with all this shock and say, really? And see, that is how I know that there's so much work that needs to be done to show how Christianity is rooted in the Old Testament scriptures. So I'll tell you more about our church. So we have way too many kids in our church. There's almost as many kids as there are adults, so it's really chaotic on Sunday morning. So if you do come, just be prepared for the chaos, because it is going to ensue you everywhere. And also, something I guess unique about what we're doing, though maybe not, we want to be a place where believers and skeptics have authentic community and honest conversations about faith and doubt. And we actually once a month have a skeptics-only Bible study. So if any of you are skeptical that Jesus rose from the dead, you would fit in very, very well in that Bible study that meets once a month at Panera. So you could come if you'd like to come. And if you have any questions, honestly, about Christianity afterwards, I'd love to answer any of them for you. So our name, The Grove, comes from Isaiah 61. And in the beginning of this chapter, it starts with Isaiah saying, "The Spirit of the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, and to bring beauty out of ashes." And then it goes on to say, all of those who have been rescued by God, it says, they will be called oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, and they will rebuild the ruined cities. In other words, those who've been rescued by God will be a grove planted in the city to seek to renew that city. So our vision is a new story for our city and its people, and we are trying to be relentless in pursuing that. And the key is, and by the way, it's God at the core who's changing our city. So the key is for us is that we've received grace, we've received mercy, we've received God's love. Hesed, is that the right word? I think maybe. And then this line, the year of the Lord's favor. Now, the way that we understand that is that's pointing to the year of Jubilee, where every 70 years all debts are forgiven. And we see that as a spiritual debt where we have sinned against God, yet He's come and we have now forgiveness in Him. So that's the Grove in a nutshell. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about Protestantism. And what I want to do is I want to focus in on bridging the gap between what Christians believe. Well, I want to bridge the gap and show you what Christians believe about the Old Testament. And how the Christians, we would say Christianity is rooted in the Jewish scriptures and how we see salvation is from the Jews. So, in fact, you might laugh at this. There's a place in the New Testament. This is how esteemed the Jewish people are in the New Testament. So there's this place where Jesus is meeting with people, and there's a woman that comes up, and she's not a Jewish woman. And essentially, Jesus has this comment that sounds incredibly offensive, but there's something beautiful behind what he's trying to say. Where essentially what he says is that anybody who's not a Jew is kind of like a dog. And you say, whoa, that's pretty intense. And then he goes on to say, and this woman says, yes, but even the dogs get scraps off of the table. And here's what's being said. All of these promises that are in the Old Testament, these beautiful promises in the Old Testament that you are feasting on. And you can take this picture, you can have this picture of me. It's like we are taking all those promises and we're like under the table, just eating them up, and they taste so, so very, very, very good. You have this feast of Old Testament promises, and we're getting as much of it as we can. So that could be your picture of me, just underneath the table, just eating the scraps, I guess you might say. And something else so fascinating. So in the Gospel of John, Jesus is making these grand claims, and this is what Christianity is saying. This is what the New Testament is saying. Jesus is making these grand claims, and people are doubting him. And he says, if you want proof that I am who I'm saying I am, look at my miracles. Look at what others are saying about me. But if you really want the proof, go to the scriptures. And I understand this is a tremendous claim. But he's saying the Old Testament's pointing forward to me. And so, and it's so fascinating what's happening. So, and by the way, can I tell you this? So when I'm struggling in my beliefs, am I allowed to say that as a pastor to you? You okay? I just want to make sure. So when I'm struggling, one of the best things for my faith is to go to the Old Testament and to read and see these promises and to see how what Christianity would say is how they're pointing also to Christ, not just to those who are reading them at that time, but also pointing forward to Christ. So it's just it very much so renews my faith. So I just want to have a little fun with this, if that's okay. And I want to show you some of the stories and how Protestants would see that this is pointing to Jesus. But before I do that, I want to tell you, so in our Skeptics Only Bible study, if I would sum up skepticism in our area, here's how I would say it looks. Sure, maybe there is a God, but he's not involved with creation. He wouldn't lower himself to that. He just kind of created us and walked away. And we know that that's not true. We see that as God creates Adam, he breathes life into him. We see God with Moses. Moses is encountering the glory of God so much so that his face is shining. And the skeptics in our area, the skeptics in our Bible study, they don't believe that this is possible. And I simply say, well, of course this is possible. If there is a God, can he not enter into his creation? And we see this all throughout the Old Testament. I think what we would call it a theophany, where God is entering into his creation. Now, here's what Christianity believes. Protestantism believes that God has just come all the way in. And I know that sounds crazy, and I agree. But God has come. That's what Christianity believes, at least. So, let me so I want to have fun with this and just kind of point to some of these things. So, here's how Protestantism would say that the Old Testament is pointing to Jesus. Let's take Leviticus. So in Leviticus, there's a few chapters where we see God's promising these grand blessings on his people. Then he says, but if you rebel from me, if you disobey me, there will be curses. But then he goes on and he says, but I promise I'm going to bless you. But if you disobey me, I'm going to curse you. But I promise you I'm going to find a way to bless you. And so you leave that saying, okay, what's going to happen to me? Am I blessed or am I cursed? Because I know that I'm sinning. So if I'm sinning, does that mean I'm cursed? But then God is promising no matter what, he's going to find a way to bless me. So what is the answer? And so here is what Christianity would say. In the New Testament, it's pulling from this idea in Deuteronomy 21, verse 23, where essentially it's saying, cursed is anyone who's hung on a tree. And so what we see Christianity say is that Jesus came, he was hung upon the tree to be cursed in our place so that we could get nothing but God's blessing. And we go to him and we say, God, I'm so sorry for my sins. And he says, it's okay, I've made a way for you. All of the things that you have done wrong, all the ways you've disobeyed, they've been handled on the cross. And this pattern is all throughout the stories of your people. Let's take the Noah story, for example. So Noah is there, and the rest of humanity is rebellious. And God's kind of done with us. But there is one righteous Jewish man who saves the day. In fact, I would not be here if it were not for Noah. None of us would be here if it were not for Noah. And so God preserves Noah and his family and then makes a promise to Noah that he's not going to flood the earth again. What is the sign and seal of that promise? It's a rainbow. Which way is that? First let me ask this question. What is the weapon? The ultimate weapon in war at that time? The bow and arrow. Which way is the bow facing? Up. Meaning, God's made these promises of blessings and curses, and He's saying here, I'm never going to do this again. But even if you continue to rebel, I'm going to find a way by pointing it back up at me. That's what Christianity is saying. And so we see on the cross, and what we see the cross as being is the place where that happens, where the bow of God's justice is bent, and the arrow is released upon Jesus on the cross in our place, so that the justice of God is satisfied. That's what Christianity is saying. And by the way, one of my favorite chapters in the Bible is Isaiah 53. That's speaking just of this suffering servant king who will come and do this for his people. All right, take the story of Jonah now. So Jonah's swallowed up into the belly of this whale and goes down to Sheol, signifying death. And then he's spit out so that the Ninevites might live. So Jonah goes and preaches to the Ninevites, and they live because he was spit up out of death. We would say that's also pointing forward to Jesus, who goes into the belly of death, is spit out so that we might have life forever with God in paradise. As we saw this paradise, this promised land, as we saw on the screen. Okay, now I'll just give you a quick rundown of some more of the stories so I don't go over on time.
Good luck.
I think I'm going to do it. Jesus is the new Adam who passed the test in the garden and whose obedience is credited to us. So we are credited with Adam's disobedience. Now, Jesus, through his life that was lived, this perfect life that was lived, his perfect record is credited to us. Jesus is the new Abel, who, though innocently slain, has blood that now cries out, not for our condemnation, but for our forgiveness. Jesus is the new Abraham, who answered the call of God to leave all the comfortable and familiar and go out into the void to create a new people of God. Jesus is the new Isaac, who was not just offered up by his father on the mount, but was truly sacrificed for us. When God said to Abraham, "Now I know you love me because you did not withhold your son, your only son whom you love. You didn't withhold him from me." Now we can look at God taking his son up to the mountain and sacrificing him and saying, "Now we know that you love us because you did not withhold your son, your only son, whom you love from us." Jesus is the new Joseph, who at the right hand of the king forgives those who betrayed and sold him and uses his new power to save them. Jesus is the new Moses, who stands in the gap between the people and the Lord and who mediates a new covenant. Jesus is the new rock of Moses, who was struck with God's justice, now gives us water in the desert. Jesus is the new David, whose victory over the Goliath of sin and death becomes his people's victory. And last, Jesus is the new Passover lamb, innocent, perfect, helpless, and slain, so the angel of death will pass over us. All of this came through you. All of these promises. right through you. I might argue that to be Christian is a very Jewish thing to do. Okay, did I finish in time? I finished in under 20 minutes. So if I can do that, surely Jesus could rise from the dead. All right. Can I pray? Is that okay? Is that for me to do? Is it? Yeah? Okay. All right. God, I'm honored to be up here. God, I hope I have done justice to your promises in the Old Testament. And God, as we are here, wandering in the wilderness, I pray that you would make your truth very clear to us. God, we hope, we pray, all of these promises might rain down upon us. We pray this in Jesus' name, amen. I don't know how any other way to pray but to say that.
Amen.
Amen. Oh, amen. Sorry. Okay. Okay, I'm done. Under 20 minutes. I did it. Do you want the microphone? Oh. Do they normally clap for you?
What?
Do they normally clap for you when you're done speaking?
No, they usually throw money. Yeah, forget that. Yeah. I am now sure that the idea for these events is a good one and an important piece of a puzzle. And I want to thank David, who really was our first sacrifice. And I think I have it all worked out now. If I tell everybody you got 8 minutes, we'll get 20. But I've heard him. He's terrific. And this was, in his mind, 20 minutes. And it was wonderful. And I can't thank you enough. And the friends that you have brought from your congregation to be here as well, so that we can create understanding. We don't have to agree on everything. If we did, how boring would this world be? And if God created all of this, don't you think if God wanted us all to see everything the same and hear it the same and live it the same, good Lord, don't you think God could have done it that way? God wanted us to be in a struggle to find ourselves. And that's okay. That's what makes it wonderful to be human. So David, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you. And those of your congregation who came tonight and those who are here every Sunday. And I have to tell you, he wasn't kidding about the kids. I think that we need to get busy. I pulled in here up a Sunday morning, and so one of their kids was outside, and he saw me pull into my parking space, and he said, "You can't do that. That's the rabbi's space." That's okay. I gave him a little bit of candy corn, and he disappeared. In any case, thank you, thank you, thank you. We are so blessed to have you folks here sharing this sacred space with us. And we hope you join our sacred food and coffee in there afterwards. Announcements? Sure, we're not doing those. Just a few. Set your clock.
Our president.
Good job.
Good job.
For those of you who are visiting, I am Toby Reddick. I am honored to be the president of this congregation. I too wish to thank Pastor David Hancock for joining us this evening. It's on. Okay, is this better? No. That better? No.
It
wasn't on.
All right, start over.
No, I'm not. I want to thank David. And his enthusiasm is so contagious. I love it. I love the enthusiasm that he shows. And as far as Rabbi's concerned, those kids are going to be a long time coming around here. We could be the great-grandparents of his congregation. But I do want to welcome everybody who is here this evening, David's congregation, our other guests, and our members who came out this evening. I want to wish a happy birthday to Sheila Marks. Sheila, where did you go? She is celebrating her birthday tomorrow. There are no anniversaries this week, and I hope, oh, by the way, this, as you know, we are streaming our services live now. If you are unable to come to services, if you go to the youtube.com and type in Temple Bethel Israel, you will see us there. The interesting part this evening is if somebody came in late to this service and they saw David standing here preaching, that's going to be really interesting. I hope you'll join us tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. with Dr. Larry Giltman when he has his very popular Torah study. Brotherhood is looking for a few good men and women to help work the concession stand at the Mets game. If you can work either February 27th or March 8th, please give Mark Ginsburg a call. Shabbat Across America service and potluck dinner is Friday, March 1st. Admission to the dinner is either a main dish or a side dish. Our Ohel Moed families will be bringing dessert. Please let the office know what you will be bringing. Following the next evening, we will have the Sisterhood and Brotherhood's Mardi Gras celebration dinner and show. Tickets are available in the office. The Council on Aging will be presenting a diabetes program every Thursday from February 21st through March 29th. If you are interested in attending, please let the office know about that also. And since you did not come here to hear me speak, I'm going to ask you to look for the other events in your weekly news, in the shofar, or online at templebethelIsrael.org. And I hope you all join us for our Own It, which is sponsored by the Sisterhood this week and prepared by the Sisterhood following our service. Shabbat Shalom.
And just in a 15-second announcement, as some of you know, Temple Bethel Israel and its members were invited to go on a Holocaust tour of Europe that starts June 10th and goes to June 21st. It is going to be a remarkable, truly once-in-a-lifetime Holocaust tour because of where it's going and because it is aimed at adults and it is a private tour. So we're not going to be running around every day. But very quickly, amongst the things that we're going to see in Berlin, Gestapo headquarters, in Berlin, Jewish Museum, in Warsaw, we are going to have a tour of Warsaw, and apparently it is starting to look, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, like we will be doing Shabbat services in the Warsaw Ghetto. We'll then travel to Krakow, seeing Poland and a number of things there. On day 7, we'll be visiting Auschwitz-Birkenau. Day 8, we travel to Prague and see the Jewish Quarter. The next day, we will do a series of other things. We then travel to Munich via Nuremberg, where we will see the Nuremberg trial sites. And our trip will end on the next day with a number of things, including the Olympic site of 1972. And our trip will end with a visit to the Dachau concentration camp, a memorial visit. We will be doing memorial services at each of the campsites. It will be a once-in-a-lifetime trip. The cost has been kept down, and as more people sign up, the cost will reduce as there is no organization making money on the trip. So if you have interest, please, there is a sort of sizable reduction in cost if you sign up, I guess, by February 20th, so that arrangements can be made. It covers everything but lunches. So if you are interested, please, we can give you the information, and off we go. We will also be traveling with, I believe, 15 students from Treasure Coast High School who have all chosen to go to see what the world was and to see how they can change it and make it better. It will be a once-in-a-lifetime amazing opportunity. As we move to conclude our service, we call on Marty Kahn and Arnold Marks.